The Isdalen Valley in Norway is a place where the earth seems to have been torn open, known to the locals of Bergen by the much darker name of Death Valley. It is a jagged, desolate stretch of scree, black rock, and permanent ice. In the winter of 1970, the valley was a kingdom of bone-chilling winds and shadows that stretched like long, thin fingers across the gray stone. This was not a place for the casual hiker. For centuries, local legends spoke of travelers who wandered into the thick mountain mist and simply ceased to exist. The terrain is an enemy, steep, deceptively slippery, and entirely indifferent to the fragile nature of human life. It was here, on a cold November afternoon, that a father and his two young daughters decided to test the slopes. They weren't looking for a mystery, they were looking for a weekend escape, but the valley was waiting to give them something else, a discovery that would trigger one of the most complex, cold, and haunting international forensic investigations in history. As the hiking party scrambled over a ridge of loose, shifting stones, the youngest daughter spotted something out of place, a dark, irregular shape huddled against the gray landscape. It looked at first like a charred piece of driftwood or a fallen branch, but as they drew closer, the sickening reality took hold. It was a woman. She was partially sprawled across a small clearing, her body badly burned and blackened by fire. Yet her position was not of struggle. It was strangely deliberate, as if she had been posed in a final grin tableau. Around her lay a collection of items that felt less like trash and more like a ritual. 2 plastic water bottles, a silver spoon with its initials meticulously filed away, and a single piece of bread resting on a stone. There was no campfire nearby. There were no matches, no lighters, and no sign that anyone else had been there. Just a woman in the center of a frozen wasteland, surrounded by objects that seemed to speak a language that no one, not even the police, could understand. When the Bergen police arrived, the investigation immediately hit a wall of absolute silence. This is where the case moves from a common tragedy to a forensic anomaly. Every single identifying mark on the woman's belongings had been surgically removed. The labels on her expensive clothes had been cut out with a steady hand. The brand names on her water bottles were scraped away with a blade. Even the labels on her medication had been peeled off, leaving only white, anonymous plastic. From a forensic pathology standpoint, the autopsy revealed a horror within a mystery. The woman had died from a lethal combination of carbon monoxide poisoning and the ingestion of over 50 sleeping pills. The analysis of her lungs proved she had been alive while she was burning. To understand the Isdal Woman, we must look at the terrifying precision of her movements. She was not a drifter or a victim of circumstance. She was a professional. When police tracked her suitcases to a railway station in Bergen, they found a wardrobe of high-end, fashionable clothes sourced from across Europe. She was a woman of significant means, someone who spoke at least 4 languages: French, German, English, and Dutch, with the fluency of a native. Staff at the luxury hotels where she stayed described her as composed, elegant, and extremely guarded. She traveled under at least 8 different aliases, using forged passports that were crafted with such skill they bypassed every border check in Europe. She was a ghost who moved through the world of high-end diplomacy and international travel with the cold, calculated efficiency of an intelligence asset. But what kind of professional needs 8 lives just to visit the quiet mountains of Norway? Inside one of her hidden suitcase compartments, investigators found a small, leather-bound notebook. It contained no names, no addresses, and no personal thoughts. Instead, it was filled with a series of cryptic codes, dates, locations, and shorthand that seemed to track her precise movements across the continent. When the Norwegian Intelligence Service, PST, was finally called in, they made a connection that changed the nature of the case forever. The dates in her notebook corresponded perfectly with secret military tests of the Penguin missile, a highly classified, state-of-the-art Norwegian anti-ship missile being tested in the fog-shrouded fjords nearby. The Isdal Woman wasn't a tourist, she was a watcher. She was tracking the movements of the Cold War's most advanced weaponry, hiding in plain sight as a wealthy socialite while she gathered data for a power that remained, and still remains, in the deepest shadows of history. The presence of phenobarbital in her system, the massive quantity of sleeping pills, raises a toxicological question that defies standard criminal logic. Why take a lethal dose of sedatives and then set yourself on fire? In the world of high-level espionage, this is often referred to as liquidating an asset. If the Isdal Woman was a spy who had been compromised, her death may have been a forced suicide, a cleanup operation conducted by her own handlers to ensure she could never be interrogated. The use of fire is a classic intelligence method to destroy DNA evidence and fingerprints, a technique used to erase a human being from existence. She wasn't just killed, she was deleted. In 1970, Norway was a front-line state in the silent war between the East and the West. The Isdal Valley sat within earshot of sensitive radar installations and secret naval bases. To the investigators of the time, the Isdal Woman represented the ultimate silicon ghost, a person with no past, no family, and no country. Despite her fingerprints being sent to Interpol and every major intelligence agency, from the CIA to the KGB, no one claimed her. Not the Stasi, not the Mossad, not the British. It was as if she had been synthesized in a laboratory, used for a single mission, and discarded in a valley when her usefulness had reached its end. She was a citizen of nowhere, dying for a cause that would never acknowledge her name. For 46 years, the Isdal Woman remained nothing more than a haunting sketch on a missing poster in a Bergen police station. But in 2016, a new generation of investigators decided to use the science of the future to solve a mystery of the past. Using isotope analysis on her teeth, a process that tracks the chemical signatures of the water and soil a person consumed as a child, they were able to narrow down her biological origin. The science proved she wasn't Norwegian. She had spent her early childhood in the border region between France and Germany. She was a child of the Second World War, someone whose very identity had been forged in the fire and chaos of a collapsing Europe. She was a product of the borderlands, a woman who had spent her whole life learning how to cross lines that didn't exist. The most prevailing theory among Cold War historians
is that the Isdal Woman was a sleeper agent who had been discovered by local intelligence. In the high-stakes game of 1970s espionage, once an agent's face is known to the other side, they are considered burned. If she possessed information that could compromise an entire network of spies, her death might have been a cleanup operation. Her handlers may have provided the pills and the fire, giving her a choice: a quiet death in the mountains or a public trial that would lead to a much darker end. The ritual objects found around her body were likely a clever distraction designed to make local police look for a mentally ill hiker rather than a professional operative.
Another theory, supported by her increasingly erratic behavior in the weeks before her death, is that she was a woman fleeing a past that wouldn't stay buried. Some believe she was a survivor of the Nazi era who had become a target for Nazi hunters like the Mossad. Her constant changing of luxury hotels and aliases wasn't for spy work, but for a desperate, frantic survival. She was a woman who had seen the worst of humanity, a person whose secrets were finally catching up to her in the cold air of Norway. In this version of the story, her death in Death Valley was a final act of agency, a way to ensure that no one could ever haunt her again. The Isdal Woman was eventually buried in a zinc coffin, a material chosen specifically so that she would not decompose, in the desperate hope that one day DNA science would be enough to give her a name. Her funeral was a cold affair, attended only by the police officers who failed to solve her case. Today, she rests in a nameless grave in a Bergen cemetery, a woman who spoke at least 4 languages but chose to remain silent until the very end. The Isdal Valley still carries its dark reputation, a place where the wind seems to whisper the names she used to sign hotel registries. It is a reminder that you can change your clothes, your hair, and your country, but you can never truly outrun the valley. If you were to erase every trace of who you are, every label, every digital record, every photo, would you still be the same person? Or are we simply the sum of the things we leave behind? The Isdal Woman chose to be a ghost, and 50 years later, she still haunts the cold valleys of Norway. Perhaps some mysteries aren't meant to be solved by science. Perhaps they are meant to be warnings about the cost of living in the shadows.